What are these powers at your command?
The Hermetic Arts. The ability to take the fundamental forces of the universe and direct them, control them with a will. Alchemy, sorcery, magic, or science. It's been called by many names.
I don't think I'm ready for this.
I think you are.
You're telling me you're a sorcerer. And my father, was he like you?
No.
He gave me the ring. And one day he knew you'd come for me, didn't he?
He did?
I used to feel I was the one meant to die in that accident, and somehow it was my fault.
I believe the accident was intended for you. Your parents died to protect you.
Protect me? And my latent talents?
Those talents are very rare indeed.
Well, I don't think I want to know about them. I came here to try to help a patient of mine. I've become a sorcerer's apprentice.
Of course. The girl's life is in danger. If we're going to help her, we should do so quickly.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Perry Constantine.
And I am your other host, Derek Ferguson.
How you doing today, Derek?
I'm doing quite well, sir, adjusting to this blasted godforsaken daylight savings time, which I hate with the passion of 1,000 fiery suns.
Yeah, it screwed up our recording time a little bit because I messaged you and you're like, isn't it supposed to be another hour? And I'm like, oh yeah, you guys still have daylight savings times over there.
Yeah, but I was sitting in front of my computer anyway, so I said, yeah, no big deal. I said, if you're ready to go, listen, I'm ready to go too. And so here we are, folks.
But you've got something to announce. You got a new book that just came out.
Yes, from Prose Productions, Dylan the Odd Jobs. It came out early. What was it? This is Tuesday, yeah, so it came out last week. And for those of you who have been following my Dylan series, this one is an unusual anthology in that the stories in this book were written by other people. One was written by Eric Fromm, one was written by Russ Anderson Jr., one was written by Joel Jenkins, and one was written by Mark Bousquet. All guys who, I've known for years. They're extremely talented writers, and they had long wanted to do a Dylan story. So I said, well, listen, write it up, and I will bludgeon Tommy Hancock into submission, and we'll, publish it. And we did, and it's out now with a cover, of course, by Sean E. Ali. And from the initial reactions, it's, people are enjoying it a lot, especially since when Tommy first put it out, the ebook was only 99 cents. So it very quickly shot up to, So, yeah, so it's doing well. So people go out and pick it up, and I hope you'll enjoy it. And if you want any more information about Dylan and the other books in the series, well, there is a Dylan website that I have up. As a matter of fact, I have just given it a facelift. If I had been neglecting it for a while because I was tired of with some other stuff, but I said once this book comes out, and next month there's going to be another Dylan book out, the Dylan annual collection for this year, which is going to have all Dylan Christmas stories.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have any of so you didn't write any of the stories in the Odd Jobs then?
I did not write any of the stories in the Odd Jobs. I did not. The only thing I did, Eric Fromm's story, Dylan and the City of Stone, I may have added a sentence here and there, but that was for the purposes of continuity, just to make sure that the events of that story jibe with events in other stories, but but that's all I did. Yeah, I mean, these guys, they wanted to go, so I said, hey, have at it, and they did, and I'm happy to say that I couldn't be more proud of the stories that's in there, because you know what, it's a really odd feeling reading about characters that you created and seeing how other people see them,
right?
Which has given me a whole new perspective on my own characters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not only from a creative standpoint, not only from an entertainment standpoint that I was entertained reading it, but from a creative standpoint, it also gave me an insight into my own creations, which is a very exciting prospect. And I hope that for all you other writers out there, I hope that you get that same opportunity so you know exactly what I'm talking about and what I'm feeling.
So with the Dylan novels, did you? I remember they used to be through Pulpwork Press. Have all of them now been re-released through Prose?
Yeah, all of them have been re-released through Prose because I did the what? Okay, there was like a whole bunch of novelettes and novellas. They weren't full novels, but they were, kind of substantial. And I just put them into the first Dylan annual collection. Okay. So stuff like the Pirates of Zanera, that was originally published as its own novel, even though it was kind of slim. So I just stuck it in there. And the Dylan and the Legend of the Golden Bell, The Voice of Odin, all of those have been reissued through Prose and all of them with new covers designed by Sean Ali and the Dylan logo provided by, of course, by you.
Happy to do it by the way, too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful logo. Yeah, all of it. And the Dylan annual collections, they're going to be stories that I originally presented as serials on my Patreon site. Every month, once a month, there's a new chapter. And then at the end of the year, I collect it along with what other Dylan stuff that I've done during that year, and I put it all into one collection. Now, these Christmas stories are stories that have appeared elsewhere, but I wanted to put them all together in one book because, like I said, they were scattered. My whole purpose of consolidating all the Dylan stuff into one book so people wouldn't have to go searching all over the place in like 5 different websites, or, they got to go to Amazon and download 4 or 5 different books and, to get them all. This way, if you get the annual collections, you've got all of the stories and novelettes, and then just got to get the novels and you're done.
Right. Good idea.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So now today we're talking about your pick, which is kind of an interesting one, the 1978 Doctor Strange TV movie.
Yeah. This is a movie keeping in line with our mission statement, at least for these initial movies that we're covering. We're covering some movies that we think are seminal touchstones in superhero movie cinema. And one of those movies I wanted to touch on, not only because it was like the first time we saw Doctor Strange in live action, but it was all part of that thing because Marvel was pretty big on TV during the 70s. They had the whole TV show. They had the Captain America movies. There was
Spider-Man.
a couple of Spider-Man. There was a couple of Daredevil movies that was made.
There was Daredevil appeared in one of the Hulk TV movies.
In one of the Hulk TV. Thank you very much. Yeah, I always get that confused. Yeah, Rex Smith, I believe, played Daredevil.
Yeah, it was in Trial of the Incredible Hulk.
Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Yeah, Thor appeared in one of those Hulk movies as well.
Yeah, Return of the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, so Marvel was pretty active. Yeah, I think it was. So Marvel was pretty active on our TV screens during the 1970s. And Doctor Strange, while it's been overlooked by a lot of people, to me, it actually stands out for a number of reasons in that, first of all, you have the act, especially from, what's her name, Jessica Walter, who most people will know from Arrested Development.
That surprised me because I know Jessica Walter. I know her from Arrested Development. I know her from Archer. And when I saw the name in the credits, I'm like, oh, that name sounds really familiar. I'm like, why can't I place that name? And then when she came on screen, I'm like, it's Lucille Bluth.
Yeah, I imagine people say, oh my God, it's her, because I don't think people realize how long she's been around.
Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, she looks really good in this movie.
Oh man, she looks fantastic in this. Listen, she's one of those babes that, if she came to me and she talked about, well, listen, I want you to turn evil and you can have all of this. If you turn evil, I'd have to give it some serious consideration.
Yeah.
And she does during the course of the movie. She tries to seduce Stephen Strange with blatant sexual favors if he'll, just come over to her side, and like I'm sitting there and I'm watching, I'm saying, man, listen, I don't want you to do it because you're the good guy, but if you do it, I understand.
I understand, yeah.
I understand completely. It's Jessica Walter. Yeah, okay. I completely understand. But
now, the whole reason this movie came about was because Marvel had a deal with CBS. So they had the deal for the Incredible Hulk TV series, which started off with the TV movie, Spider-Man, which also started off with a TV movie, and then both of those were followed by TV series, which Incredible Hulk became like a cultural touchstone, whereas Spider-Man kind of didn't. And then they also did Doctor Strange, which was supposed to be a backdoor pilot, and the two Captain America ones. There was, Captain America, and then there was the sequel. I think it was like Death Too Soon or something like that, where he had the plastic shield.
Yeah, I think that was the one where Christopher Lee played the bad guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Christopher Lee played the bad guy. Yeah, but that was the one where he actually played Steve Rogers Jr., the son of the original Captain America.
Right.
And that was the whole deal with him. So, which I actually thought it was kind of clever that they said, okay, well, you know something, since we're going to give him the plastic shield and everything like that, and he had like a completely different origin, because they gave him a derivative of the super soldier serum called Flag.
Right.
And they said, well, since you've got your father's DNA, this Flag is a refined version of the original formula that's just going to kickstart your DNA and give you the same abilities your father had. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was pretty clever. But yeah, you're right. This was part of that whole package. And as you so accurately point out, Incredible Hulk went on to become a cultural milestone, which is why we still talk about it today, and we don't talk about the Amazing Spider-Man, which,
right. Well, even Stan Lee hated that show, and Stan Lee hates none of the Marvel adaptations, but he hated the Spider-Man TV show.
Yeah, and with good. I mean, the first season, it wasn't that bad, but then when they had put the belt on the outside and they gave him the one web shooter and everything
right.
And it was so obvious that it was a guy it was a stuntman that was in a costume, and it wasn't the actor Nicholas Hammond. They couldn't even be bothered to try to find a guy that fitted his height and his, general build. It was just sad. It wasn't like the Incredible Hulk, which did have Bill Bixby going for it, who put his own creative input into it because he really enjoyed the series and he enjoyed what he was doing. And he had the clout that he could, say, okay, well, I want this done. I want, okay, we'll change that script and change this. So, we did have him, we had nobody in the Spider-Man series that had that kind of clout. So it died a swift and merciful death, thank God.
Yeah, and they also had Aunt May played by a different actress in every single episode.
Yeah. I mean, Spider-Man was something that I get the feeling that they thought was a good idea at the time. And for those of you who are listening to this, you have to remember that this was back in the time when superhero stuff was thought of as being something for kids.
I looked up the dates because I was curious when I saw the year this came out. And this actually came out a few months before the Superman the movie. Yeah.
Which to me accounts for, but see, that was one of the things about Doctor Strange that I wanted to touch on. That considering that this was the 70s, this was a pretty mature look at the character.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we didn't even need the costumes. He could have just been a guy.
That is my biggest criticism of this movie, is that you really don't need the costume, and when you put him in it at the end, it just feels so out of place.
Yeah, because, okay, up until the moment that we got although I do have to admit, is again, going back to how I would jump on the bandwagon and Jessica Walter asked me to turn evil, she gave him a far better costume than John Mills. She had him looking like a pimp.
You know what? And that's the thing. The costume that she gives him with the black robes and everything and the necklaces, I thought that looked really good. And I'm like, they should have just stuck with that. There was no reason to change it.
Now, that was a cool-ass costume. Like I said, he had, like you said, he got the Mr. T gold chains around his neck, and he's got the gold armbands and the black and red robes. I said, now he looks like a sorcerer. He looks like that costume that Lindmer puts him in. See at the end, I said, "What the hell is this shit?"
It feels so out of place, especially because the ironic thing is that the costume is even brighter colors than his costume in the comics.
Yeah. But the costume that Jessica Walter gives him, that worked for me. If they had just kept him in that would have worked for me.
Yeah. Definitely.
But that other thing that they give him, it looks like a pair of, I don't know, it looks like underoos. I'm sorry, that looks like something that a kid would, that looks like something like a kid would wear for Halloween.
Well, did you ever read the Doctor Strange run that Warren Ellis did in the, I want to say, mid-late 90s?
Probably not.
All right, well, he had Doctor Strange in kind of a more street clothes look, where his cape was actually became like a trench coat type thing. Yeah. And basically he was just so that was like his main outfit, it was just kind of like more like magic inspired street clothes. And I think that kind of look would have worked really well for a series like this.
Yeah, because there's a scene where he's walking down the street and he's dressed like all in black. He's got like a black jacket, a black turtleneck. And I said, something for this movie that could have worked with him through the whole thing. They didn't have to put him in a costume at all, because when they do, it's kind of like an afterthought. Like they say, oh shit,
right?
This is supposed to be a superhero type of thing. Whereas up until then, what we've got is pretty much like a horror type thing, this Doctor Strange is more of a horror type movie than it is a superhero.
It is, yeah. It's very much in that like urban fantasy vein that would develop later.
Right, that's what I'm looking for. When you talk about like what's that series that everybody's so crazy about? Like the Dresden Files or stuff like that. Yeah, okay, that's sort of urban fantasy. That's right. This is more like an urban fantasy than a superhero thing until we get to the end, and they stick them in that ridiculous costume, which, like I said, seems to me too much like an afterthought. Like they would say, "Oh well, he's supposed to be a superhero, so let's stick him in a costume," which they really didn't have to do. But speaking of which, I have to give this guy credit, Peter Hooton. I never heard of him before. I've never heard of him since. I have no idea if he acted anything like that. But I like it because this guy looks like he stepped right out of the comic books.
Yeah. I mean, his hair's a little bit too curly, but other than that, he looks really much like the part.
Yeah. I mean, that's what gets me. I said, wow. I said, you know what? Okay, he sells me on being Doctor Strange, and he's got that nice voice. He's got a voice that sounds like he's like a singer or something like that. Maybe that's where they found him at. I have no idea. But,
well, he's actually been a B actor mostly. So I'm looking him up right now, and he's still alive. He was in a movie called Soul Eater about 2 years ago, and he was in the original Inglourious Bastards.
Right. Yes, he was. Okay. But he didn't have the mustache in that one. That's where I remember it. Because I'm watching Doctor Strange and I'm saying, okay, I know I've seen him in something else, but it didn't hit me with it. But when you said the original, yeah, he played like the psycho guy that was in the crew. Yeah. Okay. See, now you want to make me go watch the original Inglourious Basterds again now, which I probably will do.
He's been in a bunch of, mostly he did a lot of TV, and then it looks like other than that, just like mostly B movies, and not a lot. Like he was in Night Killer in 1990, and then he didn't do anything else until 2013. So yeah, well, he's not very active, but he does stuff every now and then.
Yeah, he's pretty good in this. I mean, he doesn't blow Jessica Walter and John Mills off the screen, or even Clyde Kusatu, who plays the faithful servant Wong.
Right.
Very well, as a matter of fact. But, like, they're all better actors. He holds his own, though. I mean, the thing that impresses me most about him is that he knows exactly the type of role he's supposed to be playing, and he does it. And he plays it with a level of seriousness and gravitas that, draws you into the story, which everybody does. The movie didn't have a lot going for it as far as special effects went, because obviously they spent little to no money on this movie. But for me, the performances, they make up for it, because everybody is committed 100% to whatever role they're playing, and they do it very well. So it's the performances that drive this piece through the whole thing, and very well, I think, very well.
And something about this is that Stan Lee was very heavily involved in the production. He said that this, of all the projects that Marvel did back then, this is the one that he had the most input in, and he said that next to The Incredible Hulk, this is the one that he was most pleased with. And his theory is that the ratings on it were bad because it was aired against Roots at the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, when I saw this, I had to actually go over to a friend's house to watch it because, Roots, that's all that was playing in my house. And see, all the black people who are listening to this, who was around back then, they're nodding their heads because they knew exactly what I was talking about. Roots was on. And we only had one TV set in my house at that time. Yes, folks, believe it or not, there was a time when there was only one TV set that was in the house. So if I was not willing to watch what my parents was watching, I didn't watch TV at all. Yeah, I did not watch TV at all because there was only one TV set in the house.
You saw this in its original airing then?
Oh, yeah, definitely I saw this. Yeah, I told my mom, I said, listen, I'm going downstairs because I had a friend downstairs and I knew that he would be watching it because he had a black and white TV set in his room. So I was going down to my friend's house and watching. My mom said, you better sit here and watch Roots. Man, listen, you watch Roots and you tell me what happened. I got to see Doctor Strange. Yeah.
So were you a fan of Doctor Strange going into the show?
Yeah, I was a fan of Marvel, period. I mean, this was the 70s. This is when I was fully into my comic book fan phase. I was a fan of Doctor Strange. I was a fan of the Hulk, Iron Man, everybody. If it was Marvel, I was a fan of it, basically. So, yeah, okay. Doctor Strange, yeah. I was into Doctor Strange. I wanted to see this movie, but I wanted to see any superhero movie, period, because unlike now, we didn't have a plethora of superheroes.
Right.
So, I mean, whenever something came along, if you was a comic book fan back then, you jumped on it with both feet because that was all you had. And you didn't know if there was going to be anything else. Of course, you hoped there would be a series or whatever, but you didn't take the chance that you was going to miss it. And of course, back then, I mean, we're talking about the 70s. It wasn't like now where if you miss something, you can go to on demand or, whatever, or you can stream it. If you missed it, chances are you would have to wait until it was rerun, and maybe it would be rerun like a year later.
And if it was rerun, because this had bad ratings, so it probably was not shown very often again.
No. Matter of fact, I think the only time I ever saw this again on TV, I think it was shown on The Late Show on CBS.
Oh, okay.
They showed like 11:30 at night. Mm-hmm. And that was like the next summer or something like that it was shown. Yeah. So if you didn't watch it when it aired, chances are you wouldn't see it again. And like you said, if it was bad ratings, you probably wouldn't, the chances were excellent that you wouldn't see it again. Or you could wait for the summer, because in the summertime, that was the rerun season. That's what we had, what we call, for those of you too young to remember, summer was rerun season. So any of your favorite TV shows that you missed, any movie that you missed, during the summer times, that's when the networks would rerun a whole bunch of stuff. So,
The interesting thing about this is, like, you know me. You know that I'm got a lot of knowledge about these superhero media adaptations. And even if I haven't seen something, I at least know it exists. But
True.
this, like, I'd heard about this movie, and for the longest time, I thought it was actually something that was never released. I thought it was like the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, and that it had never... So when you suggested it, and I looked it up, I was surprised to find out that it had actually aired on TV.
Yeah. It aired on TV. I do believe it was released on DVD.
Yes,
I'd have to look.
There is a DVD release of it.
Yeah. So it had, so, but no, so you're not the only one. A lot of people think that this movie was never released at all. When they heard about it, they did, oh, well, it was, I said, no, it was shown on TV. And, as a matter of fact, the Sci-Fi Channel in its early days, when it was the Sci-Fi Channel, before they changed it to that nauseating niggleism, when it was the Sci-Fi Channel, and they didn't have access to a lot of original content, and what they would do is they would have a week where they would show old superhero movies and serials, and they showed this. They showed Doctor Strange. Mm-hmm. Along with, the Captain America movies, that theatrical Captain America movie that where he had the rubber ears.
Right.
Yeah, so they showed like a lot of that old stuff because, like I said, they didn't have original content, so all they had to show was the old stuff. So so the Sci-Fi Channel would, they showed Doctor Strange like a couple, and I do believe that was the last time I ever saw it on TV back in those early years when the Sci-Fi Channel first got started. After that, it just disappeared.
Now, when you suggested this, I actually had a moment of because I'd never seen it, but I'd seen like the still photos of it, of him in the costume, and going into it, I was expecting the worst. I was expecting something that was going to be campy and just painful to watch. But then I saw it, and I'm really surprised. I mean, this was actually pretty dark. I mean, it's not... Like, when I say dark, it's not something you'd expect now, but for 1978, this is pretty damn dark. And while there is a little bit of camp in it, it's like 1970s primetime camp. The kind of stuff you would have seen on any primetime TV show in the 70s.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? And I said to myself, because usually when I say to people, you got to watch this one, the 1970 Doctor Strange, they have the same reaction as you do. And then if they manage to watch everything like that, they say, oh man, that was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, which it is. It's a lot.
It is.
And like I said, considering that it's 1978, for instance, Doctor Strange, he's not the asshole that, let's say, like the Bernard Cumberbatch,
Benedict Cumberbatch
is. But he's not exactly, the nicest of guys either, because it's pretty obvious that he sleeps around,
Oh, that would surprise me, because you would never see anything like that in something based on superheroes back then, because like you said before, everyone thought it was all kid stuff. But the first time we're introduced to the main character, to the superhero, the nurse comments on how his latest conquest wears cheap perfume.
Yeah, and he says, well, that's because I gave it to her.
Yeah. And then he's taking his patient out on a date and stuff like that. So
yeah,
this is a swinging Doctor Strange.
Yeah, so it's established that when it comes to women, he's pretty free and easy with how he treats them.
Yeah,
So we have that. Jessica Walters, she's a pretty stone cold villain in this one. I love the scene where she's in the cab and it's a bunch of young black kids. They surround the cab and they're begging for money and stuff like that. And she just gives one kid a look and he just like, oh shit. And he turns and he just backs up, And she has that way of looking.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought first.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the interesting thing is Morgan Le Fay. This is the first time a Marvel super villain appeared in live action, because all the other TV shows that came out at this time, they didn't have any actual supervillains in them.
That's very true. And Morgan Le Fay was, I don't recall if she actually was a Doctor Strange villain, but I do know that she had shown up in, various incarnations in Marvel comic books. As a matter of fact, the character of Linmer in this movie, played by John Mills, is strongly hinted that he's actually Merlin. Oh,
I didn't even pick up on that, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when he talks about like his age. And then there's that scene that he has on the bridge with Morgan Le Fay when she takes over Clea's body and Clea just pitches him off the side, just throws him off of the bridge. Yeah, but they're having that conversation, and from their dialogue, you get the impression that they've been fighting this war for a very long time.
Yeah, I got a very Giles vibe from him, which I really liked. I thought he was a good addition to the cast, to have this character, an existing sorcerer, to kind of be Strange's induction. And at first, I thought he was just like a heavily retooled version of the Ancient One. So I was kind of surprised at the end when he tells Strange that now you have to seek the teachings from the Ancient One.
Yeah. Who is voiced by Michael and Sarah.
Yeah.
When we hear that voice the end and he's telling Doctor Strange, will you be a servant of the light and all that kind of stuff? And Wong's like, that's the Ancient One. He gets into that mood sometimes. But yeah, it's interesting that, we've got a guy, who obviously, he is the main guy, the Sorcerer Supreme, and he passes it on to Stephen Strange. And I guess if this thing had went to series, he would have stuck around to be like a mentor.
You can see that they totally intended this to be a series, because they even had the thing with Morgan Le Fay popping up at the end as a New Age guru type of thing.
Right. Yeah, which I loved. I would have loved to see.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that continue, because you had the scene where her beauty is stripped away from her, and you know what? I don't know about you. I was like, oh man, because she's such a great villain. You hate to see that. I hate to see. You know what? If you have to go out in a grand manner.
Right.
But her beauty was stripped away from her, and she's stuck on that asteroid, floating out in Ditko space, someplace like that. And then when she pops up again at the end, you want to cheer because you say, oh man, she's back. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
She's okay. Oh, boy.
And I couldn't help thinking, when I was watching the end of this, of imagining stories that would have happened if this had gone to series. And that's a series I would have liked to watch, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, they could have done it. Well, I mean, they did this one for no money. Because like I said, folks, you will not find the CGI effects that you saw in our Cumberbatch Doctor Strange. No. You will not find that here. But I could very easily have seen this. And know something? With this cast, I would have enjoyed seeing it. Because John Mills, he plays his role. And you know what? He doesn't do it with any kind of bombast, anything like that. He plays it as if, and I think that's what, again, draws me into the story, at least because he treats the magic as being so matter of fact. This is something he does every day.
Right.
So
it's just it exists. It's there.
Yeah.
We accept it. We move on.
Yeah, it's there. Like, I love how when he falls off the bridge, he gets up and he walks away and he's limping, and then he takes his hand and he puts it on his hip and it glows for a minute. And and then he just goes on about it. He doesn't make a big deal out of it. He just gets up and walks away, and everybody say, "Oh my God!" And it's obvious he uses magic abilities to, break his fall or whatever he did. But I just like the way and when he's explaining to Doctor Strange about you got to take over the mantle. And he's talking like a college professor. It's very matter of fact. There's no bombastic, pronouncements and speeches, everything like that. He's talking in a very calm, reasonable manner. And I'm sitting there saying, yeah, I'm hip. Okay.
His performance, it was kind of surreal for me watching John Mills in this, because he looks and sounds in this movie exactly like my dad did.
Really?
Yeah. So it was especially the scene when he first meets Strange and they're sitting in Strange's office, and I'm watching him and there are these close-ups on him, and I'm like, and there's a picture of my dad on my wall, right next to my TV. So I'm looking up at the picture of my dad and I look at him and I'm like, holy shit. So much like you put a pair of glasses on him, that's my dad.
Wow. Oh man, that must have been kind of surrealistic for you to.
That was very surreal. Yeah, that was a very surreal moment watching this. So I'm a little bit biased in liking his performance so much in this because of that. But he does a really good job. I really liked his addition to the cast, and I think if this had gone to series, this is one of those cases where, like with Harley Quinn or like with Agent Coulson, we would have seen this character incorporated into the comics had this gone to series.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, he's just that good a character.
And now I'm looking at the name, and I see what you say, Merlin.
Yeah. I mean, the name, because there's a scene where he gives Doctor Strange his business card and says, okay, well, come see me, and he gives him the card and you read his full name. And I said, wait a minute, Merlin. Oh, it's okay, I get, yeah. And I'm saying, there's hints throughout that's who he's supposed to be, Merlin.
And Clyde Kusatsu as Wong. I really liked what they did with Wong in this, because it's not what they did in the comics, right? There's that scene where he serves Linmer breakfast, and Linmer says, you're a trusted pupil and a friend. You're not a servant.
Right. Yeah. And he's dressed in, nice Italian suits, and, he doesn't dress the way he does in the comic books. Like, he has that, funky, Asian kind of outfit.
Right.
But here, and I like how, he's not treated like a servant. I mean, there's a scene after Linmer comes back home after he's fallen from the bridge, and, Wong comes in and he sits down, he's talking to him, and they're talking as equals, as friends. And it's a nice little scene, it's not like a master-student type thing or, whatever. I mean, you really get the feeling these guys have been friends for, like a long time. Mm-hmm. And Clyde Kusatsu, he's one of these guys that, he never gets enough credit as far as I'm concerned, because no matter what he's in, he gives a good performance. Even if the movie or TV show he's in is crap, he's good.
Right.
He's always good.
And he's still working. He's working like mad. I mean, I'm looking at his credits right now. He's doing several projects a year.
Yeah. And just like everybody else, he's grounded. He gives a performance that, like I keep saying, there's not a lot of bombastic, he treats the events that are going on, as fantastic as they are, he treats them with a sort of calm matter-of-factness that fits the tone of this entire movie, which, as we said before, is a little darker and a little bit more mature than you would expect a comic book based movie to be back then. And we're talking the 1970s. This isn't a movie made for kids. It really isn't.
No, not at all. Now, there's some issues I have with it, but it's not with the... There's some story things. Like, for when Morgan tries to invade the Sanctum Sanctorum and she turns into a cat that Strange just picks up out of the rain and leaves inside the house. Now, that seemed a little bit too easy for me.
Yeah, well, you know what? I always have a problem anytime something, because I don't know, because I'm not the person. Why would I pick up a stray cat and bring it inside?
Especially into someone else's home.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not even going to do it in my house, much less somebody. How do I know if that person isn't allergic to cats?
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, when you did that, I'm just like, you know what? That's kind of a dick thing to do, Strange.
Well, you know what it is? That was the right of being lazy. They couldn't be bothered to sit and think of another way. Or it could have been because most of these movies, their plots and their stories were dictated by the budget.
Right. And
the time. Because these are movies that were made for TV. So they had to fit into, because on Daily Motion, now, of course, when this was shown on network TV, I think it was like 90 minutes, something like that.
Right.
And that was with the commercials. Now without the commercials, it's like an hour, 70 minutes, something like that. Yeah.
So something like that.
Right. So the screenwriters of these things were bound by two things. They were bound by the budget and they were bound by time, because, okay, this has got to fit. So, hey, once in a while, they had to take a shortcut. And that's what this was. It needed for her to get inside the house. So they said, oh, well, why don't we have her turn into a cat? That's not going to cost a lot of money. We can just
the thing that surprises me about it is at the end of the movie, Linmer tells Strange, I had to let her into my sanctum so that, I could get her to face you. So that's why I don't understand why they even needed her changing into the cat to begin with. Why didn't he just let her in at all?
Yeah, well, they did that whole thing. That supposedly he had, all of these things. He had manipulated all these events to make Stephen Strange realize that he had to take up the mantle of being the Sorcerer Supreme and blah, 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 yada, 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 yada. Whereas, well, listen, dude, you could have just, cut through all of because at the end he said, yeah, well, I could have defeated her any time. I just let her capture me. I could have escaped on my own, yada, yada, yada. Oh, okay. Well, it seems to me that you went around the world across the street, bro.
Exactly. Now, that's something that's different in the movie compared to the comics, is that in the comics and in the new movies, Strange seeks out the Ancient One. Right, he's trying to find a way to cure his condition so that he can be a successful surgeon again. But in this time around, it's completely the opposite. Linmer is the one who seeks out Strange, and it turns out that his father knew about it too, and his father had some connection with Linmer as well.
Yeah, they throw in that little thing that he has a conversation with him because Strange's parents were killed in a car wreck, and Linmer never comes out and says it. But he implies that the accident was caused through magical means, because he said, yeah, well, your father and I, we both studied magic. And like you said, that they completely reverse the typical origin of Stephen Strange, because he goes to find the Ancient One, and he had the impetus to do that because of his hands, which also they make no mention of in this version of Doctor Strange.
In fact, this version's not a surgeon at all. He's a psychiatrist.
He's a psychiatrist. Exactly. He's a psychiatrist. Yeah. They don't make him a surgeon at all. So they remove all of that. Again, like I said, they had the time and they had the budget, because if he's going to be looking for the Ancient One, well, then they got to take time to show him looking for the Ancient One.
Right.
It's quicker.
It actually makes sense with the approach they went with here. So, like, his gateway here is through Clea. So her being a psychiatry patient makes a lot more sense for as an easy way to bring this normal character into the world of magic.
Right.
So I was when I read the description, I was thinking to myself, wonder why they made him a psychiatrist. And then I watched the movie and I'm like, okay, now I get it. This makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. I mean, if you take this movie for what it is, which is what you're supposed to do, which always, as you know, it pisses me off when people say, well, they didn't do this and they didn't that. How come they can't do this and how come they can't do it? If you take this movie for what it is, as its own thing, it hangs together. It hangs together.
It does. But it's not even that far of a departure from the comics, really. Like, they changed some things, but, Strange is still arrogant, just arrogant in a different way. This time his arrogance is more about his womanizing and just like his ideas about his resistance to magic in the first place. He's actually very much like Tony Stark from the comics in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. He's more like, we see that, well, he's a womanizer and he doesn't have much respect for the other doctors that he works with. He thinks that, they're a bunch of assholes and everything like that.
He's always showing up late. He doesn't really care much for the head nurse who's only credited as head nurse, but I call her Nurse Ratched. Yeah. So they tweak a few things here and there, as you said. Yeah, they tweak a few things, but actually, it's not that far from the comic books, especially the comic books of that time. And see, that's what y'all guys who are listening to this now. If you only compare this to the Doctor Strange that you know now from the movies, of course you're going to be disappointed. But if you were reading the Doctor Strange comic books back at the time this movie came out, this actually isn't too far away from what the comic book was. Right. They do a lot of stuff with the plots involving like the dreams and the nightmares and all that. That made a lot of sense for connecting it with Strange being a psychiatrist, because you have all this stuff dealing with the mind and what's reality and all that sort of stuff. And there's actually I like the way they play with those concepts in this movie. I was kind of surprised at how much they use a lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect from a superhero movie back then.
And see, this is what I would do if I was running Marvel and I had and I had access to all the technology now that we have and everything like that. I would do the same thing with this movie that I would do with the Howard the Duck movie, because Howard the Duck, and here's where a lot of y'all are gonna hate me, but there's really nothing wrong with the Howard the Duck movie, except for the fact that it's so obviously a midget that's in a duck suit. What I would do is take Howard the Duck and use the current technology we have with CGI and replace that guy with a totally CGI Howard. And I think that if we did that, that movie would be accepted. Now, I would do the same thing with Doctor Strange. I wouldn't change a thing about this movie. I would only use CGI just to refine the special effects.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's the thing about the special effects. That was my other thing that I was going to mention, was the special effects, because they are really bad, even for a 1970s TV production. Yeah. But the thing I don't get is they didn't really need to use them, because a lot of the magic stuff they use, like when he heals his leg and everything, you don't really need any sort of magical effect like that. And if this had been made, in the 90s or in today, they would not have used any sort of magic effect there. It would have just been sort of implied. Right.
Yeah, you didn't have to do it, but I'm talking about like the scenes where they're like throwing magic bolts at each other and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. That I would, that kind of stuff, I would refine. Then there's a scene where Lin-Mer is telling him, well, I'm going to send your astral projection in and you got to get clear from the dream dimension, everything like that. And they're going through this tunnel of light that is obviously was stolen from 2001.
The weird spinning thing, yeah. I was thinking there must have been a dozen different ways you could have shot that at the same price without doing something that cheesy.
Right. Yeah. So I understand people when they talk about the special effect because, and as you so accurately say, and you point out, and I got to agree with you 100%, even for the 1970s, these are pretty bad special effects. But from what my understanding is that Philip Daguerre, am I pronouncing his name right?
I think so.
He was really behind this project, and apparently they promised him more money than he actually got. He thought he was going to get a bigger budget to do this movie.
But he did write, he wrote the script, and like I said about Stan Lee, him and Stan Lee became friends, so he sought out Stan Lee's input a lot. And I think maybe he may have listened too much to Stan in some things, like using the magic effects and using the costume at the end. Like there's some things I think he probably should have pushed back on him a little bit on. But you know, it's weird because there are moments here where he's got this really smart directing style. Like some of the transitions are handled really well for a TV movie.
Yeah.
But then other stuff is handled very, very poorly, very amateurishly. So it feels like it's two different guys directing sometimes.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, I can see that, especially in especially like you said, like the end, because at the end it almost becomes like a whole completely different movie. Once Stephen Strange gets that other costume and everything like that, it becomes like a totally different movie. And then what's the other scene? The other scene where the scene with Morgan Le Fay, where she takes him to the asteroid out of Ditko space and she gives him the outfit and everything like that. It's like, there's a tone shift there that I don't quite get, but it's not anything that I could put my finger on. But it's like a totally different tone all of a sudden, which maybe is what he was going for. I have no idea, but
I wonder if it was maybe any. I wonder if maybe it was any interference from the network, because they probably had a certain expectation, being that this was a superhero thing, so maybe they pushed some of that stuff on it.
Well, I'm pretty sure they did. Because like I said, throughout the whole movie, up until we get to the end, basically what we have is a horror movie.
Right, it's very cerebral.
Yeah, very cerebral. And then all of a sudden, once we get the costumes, as we said earlier, I even go with the black and red robes that she gives him, because that's part of her whole mind game that she's playing with him, trying to get him to come over to her side. And to me, if I was writing this, I would have had him kept that as a reminder. When Limmer was going to give him the dorky costume, he would have said, no, you know what? I want to keep this to remind me of how close I came to, giving up my destiny, and something like that. You know where I'm going with that.
Right. That would have been a lot better, and it would have made a lot more sense narratively speaking as well.
I think they just wanted to give him a cheap costume.
Well, the costume was actually designed by a Doctor Strange artist. It was designed by, I just saw the name here. Frank Brunner designed it.
Really?
Yeah, and he used that starburst design on a lot of different projects. It became kind of his trademark in a way. His signature.
Mark Busquette, in his review of this movie, which is up at the Ferguson Theater, folks, he says that the starburst of Doctor Strange just looked like he stole it from Captain Marvel.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did, and that was the design trope that Brunner used on a lot of different concepts. So, but it just doesn't really. Yeah,
it doesn't really work. Because why would Doctor Strange have a starburst on his chest?
It makes no sense for him to wear that, and with the sash and everything, and the cape, it's just pure gold. There's no red in it at all. The whole thing just doesn't fit very well.
Yeah.
Especially when, even Lindmer, when he wears his costume, it's just a straightforward magician's robe.
Yeah, it's just
so it seems even stranger that he'd give Strange this look.
Yeah, why would he dress him up like a circus strongman?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. But like I said, that whole thing just strikes me as that somebody said, "Oh well, this is supposed to be a superhero movie, so he's got to have a superhero costume."
Right.
Which, again, like you say earlier, he really didn't need it because it's not that type of movie. It's not your typical superhero movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Doctor Strange doesn't need a superhero costume.
And actually, I said before that Morgan Le Fay was the first supervillain, live-action supervillain, but actually there are two in this one. Morgan Le Fay is just the only one named because there's the demon that she works for, who's never named. In the credits, it's just known as the Nameless One, but it's pretty obviously it's Dormammu.
Oh yeah. Voiced by Ted Cassidy.
No. Ted Cassidy did the demon that Morgan sends after him.
Oh. Okay, so who did the voice of the Nameless One?
David Hooks.
Never heard of him.
No, he doesn't even have a photo on IMDb.
Oh, okay. Because I knew I heard Ted Cassidy's voice in there someplace. Okay, I thought it was Dormammu. Yeah, but that's who it's supposed to be. You know?
Yeah, it's that was another thing that these design types of things where they show you a little bit of the Nameless One, and it's got like this weird kind of like creature effect that just looks really cheesy. And that was another thing where I'm like, why are you even bothering showing this much? Just keep him completely in darkness and just show the glowing eyes, and that would be perfect.
Yeah. And I figured they didn't want to use the Dormammu because it's too hard for people to say.
Yeah. I think if this had gone to series, they may have eventually revealed his name was Dormammu, but I think that's what it was. There was probably a plan here because, the whole thing with magic and demons is that in a lot of the folklores about demons, a lot of their power comes in their names. So if you know a demon's name, you have power over it. So I think if this had gone to series, that would have been like an ongoing thing, like trying to find out the Nameless One's name so that they could have power over him.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the effects and stuff with something like this, when you don't have the budget for it, so it's harder to get away with that kind of stuff in, say, like a Superman movie or something like that. You can't really hold back on a lot of the powers because it's Superman. With a lot of the superhero stuff, you can't really do that. But with Doctor Strange, because it's got one foot in the horror genre, less is really more with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that they did here that could have been, like I always say that there's one reason why back in the 1970s and 80s, there was a whole bunch of Invisible Man series. Every time they did the Invisible Man, they would do it for a while and then they cancel it and then they would bring it back. And people say, well, why are they always, trying to do, that show? And I said, oh, simple, because it's the cheapest special effect there is to do Invisible Man. It's a very cheap, of course, there's nothing cheaper than an Invisible Man. And there are some characters that you can't get away from them having a big budget for the special effects because they have to have one.
Yeah.
If you don't have a big budget, you can go the Incredible Hulk route and severely depower the character. Mm-hmm. And basically turn it into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is what the Hulk is.
Right.
And it worked. But again, it worked because, as I said, Bill Bixby, he had a lot of star clout and he could afford to get, good writers and good directors. And he directed a whole bunch of the episodes himself. So it worked. With Doctor Strange, a lot of what they did, they could have implied it, as you said. They could have implied it and like really. See, me, I would have saved all my budget for the fight at the end with Morgan Le Fay, where they're throwing the magic bolts at each other.
Right. Cut back on all the magic in the other parts and just throw everything into that fight scene.
Yeah, I would have just did like, telepathy or even, I would have did it like they do with Star Wars. I mean, with the Force. They just wave their hands and shit moves around.
Exactly. That would have worked a lot better. It would have looked better for starters.
Yeah, I would have did that.
But I would have rewritten that whole battle. I would have rewritten so that it was much more psychological, because that would fit in with more of the tone of the whole movie up until that point.
Yeah. Like I would have had like Morgan Le Fay like giving him like illusions of, for instance, play up the whole thing that, you know, he messes around with women and he sees women as kind of disposable, and she says, well, not only can you have me, but you can have all of these other women too. And she shows him like a vision of all women that he can have, you know, and really blow his mind with that, you know. So yeah, but a lot of that they could have done in his mind. It could have been psychological. Like the battle, Morgan Le Fay, she has a battle with Clyde Casatu. Mm-hmm. That comes off as very ham-handed, ham-fisted, and very clunky because of the special effects.
There's all that fake fire around him, and it looks awful.
Right, where she could have just threw up a hand and have him fly up against a wall.
Right.
Bam, hits the wall. He goes, bingo, there you go. All that other stuff. That fire that's around him is so obviously fake that it pulls you out of that scene where it's supposed to be this heroic moment. You know, Wong is, you know, standing up for his boss and he's protecting his boss, but it comes off with that fake fire. Like, oh man, y'all just ruined it. You know, instead of her just using the force and just throwing him up against the wall. And that would have been a lot more effective.
Well, yeah, throwing him up against the wall or even just choking him unconscious.
Yeah, bingo.
It would have looked better, and it would have been cheaper to film anyway.
Well, there you go. And like you said, save all your money for that big fight at the end with him. And then, okay, now that's when you start unleashing all of your magic bolts and everything like that.
Yeah. And in fact, I would like that better because it would have this subtle idea that those magic bolts, they only exist on the astral plane. They don't exist in the real world.
Right.
Which I think would have fit the tone of this movie a lot more as well.
Because basically what we got here is that they had the conceit through a lot of the movie that magic is basically on the psychic plane, you know, the psychic level. A lot of magic because there's a lot of telepathy, there's a lot of, you know, image projection, all of that stuff. First of all, it's easy to do in special effects, and second of all, like you said, when you put it on the other level and we see the magic bolts coming out, now we say, oh wow, you know, okay, well, we are on another level truly here. But here, like, okay, you have the real world, it manifests itself in more subtle ways, so people can go. So in other words, so that they can go back. It's like at the end when Stephen Strange, when he just like, okay, we know he's turned the flowers into the doves. We don't see him do anything actually, but
it's just this very subtle effect they do, and it works great. It's a nice way to end it like that.
Right, exactly. That smile on his face tells us everything that we got to know, because the guy is doing the magic trick and he says he's got fire, and it's a dove that comes out. And even the guy is saying, oh, wow. And then Stephen Strange turns and he walks away and he gives that little smile. And we say, oh, he did that, you know. And see, that works that's the same tone they should have adopted in the beginning of the movie with all the other magic effects that they had. Just go ahead and do it.
Right. Another thing, too, the disappearances where they just really sudden cuts. It no fade or anything. Just the characters, just one frame they're there, the next they're gone. Like that was a little bit too jarring for me.
Well, that was where the commercials were supposed to be at. That's a bad thing about watching these TV movies that are edited together. Because remember that they put in those breaks because that's where that's where it's supposed to go.
You know what was interesting is I caught a name in the credits here. Gregory Hoblet was associate producer on this. I'm not sure if that name rings a bell. Well, he was a producer on NYPD Blue, Hill Street Blues, and also he directed Primal Fear. He directed Fallen, that supernatural movie with Denzel Washington, and he directed Frequency, the time travel movie with Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Jim Caviezel. The best line that movie. Frequency, the best line in that movie when the time travels back to the past and he tells his best friend who's a kid And he bends down to the kid and he says, listen, he said, I want you to remember one word. And the kid said, well, what's that? And the guy said, Yahoo.
No, it was Microsoft. I think it was Microsoft.
Right. Yeah, Microsoft. And then when he goes back to the future, the guy's like a gazillionaire.
Yeah. And he's even got it on his license plate, too.
Yeah, he's like, because he remembered that word. I said, you know something? I don't remember anything else about that movie, but I remember that one scene.
Well, that's one of those movies where, like a lot of time travel movies, the logic makes no sense at all.
Yeah, well, you know what? Most time travel movies don't. They really don't.
I think the only one I can think of that actually made sense was Endgame.
But you know why? Because they set out the rules. And what was so funny was that they were going by the rules according to other movies about time travel that they had seen. Remember that scene that they were standing around?
Yeah, and he tells them, he says, every movie about time travel, this is known. And the Hulk's just like, that's not how it works.
Right, yeah. So in other words, that's why that scene worked, because they're going by the rules of time travel that they've seen in other movies. Because basically, that's all we got to go on. Because nobody really understands how time travel works. They don't.
Yeah.
You know, if we ever do discover time travel, it will probably destroy the universe right then and there, because somebody's going to go back in time and they're going to mess up something.
Right.
And somebody asked me one time, they said, well, do you think we'll ever discover time travel? I said, no. I said, I don't. I said, there's a lot of things I think that we will, as a species and as a race, we will discover. I don't think we'll ever discover time travel, because if we do, we're going to destroy the universe. We are.
Now, the one thing I didn't really like, and probably the thing I hated the most about this, even beyond the effects, was, and I know you mentioned Mark's review earlier, and I read it this morning, and him and I are going to have a big disagreement on this, but I did not like the music in this movie at all.
You want to know something? You know what? I don't even notice the music. I couldn't even tell you the music. That's how non-scripted and how bland it is. Mm-hmm. There is nothing memorable about the music in this movie at all.
Now, I'm usually like you. I usually don't really notice the music that much, but for some reason it stood out to me just because. So there are two types of music in here. One, it's the really kind of cheesy 70s electronica, which you saw in a lot of movies back then, which is fine. That was the era, that was the period. I can dismiss that stuff. But then they've got this other type of music that's just really mismatched to scenes. Like, there are scenes that are supposed to be serious, and it's got like this very kind of upbeat music or almost comical music. And there's like the final scene where that starts to play this like pseudo heroic music, where I think something a lot more ominous would have fit much better for that.
That's probably why I don't notice the music, because it is so much of that generic 1970s music that I've heard in so many other TV shows and movies that I don't even pay attention to it, because I long ago programmed myself not to hear that stuff, because it is so generic. There's nothing memorable about it. You know what? And I do think that's probably just like a whole bunch of stock music that they have that they pull out of the vaults and they just stick in someplace, because I cannot imagine anybody actually sitting down and composing.
Oh, no. I'm pretty sure Ted Roberts was just phoning this in and just picking stuff out of the library and not really giving it much thought.
Yeah. I mean, nah. There's not. If you ask me what the music to this movie, I couldn't begin to tell you. 'Cause like I said, I tune it out. I don't even hear it. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, there might as well not be no music. The only music I can never remember is in the beginning when they have that opening thing where they're explaining the stuff with the red letters and they're explaining about the backstory. That's the only music that I can remember but through the rest of it, nah, I don't even pay attention.
I just realized, too, we never get any of Strange's signatures in this. Like, he doesn't have the Eye of Agamotto or anything like that.
That's because they didn't have the budget for it. It's like that old saying, what is it, that if you show a gun on the table in the first act and the second act, well, you better shoot it.
Right.
Somebody better get shot with it. Yeah, well, if you introduce the Eye of Agamotto, then you have to show them using it. Otherwise, why introduce it?
Right.
Yeah, but
I wonder if that was... This movie makes me think about the possibilities of what they would have done in a series. So I wonder if, like, the Eye of Agamotto would have played a role in the series.
Well, that would have all depended, again, on what kind of budget they got.
Right. The Eye of Agamotto, you don't really need a lot of effects for the Eye of Agamotto. Like, you could just have it open up every now and then and gives him some insight into stuff.
What you do is that, like you said, just have the thing on his chest and it opens up and we see the eye, and then we see Doctor Strange just have a vision.
Yeah, that's all you need.
That's all you need to do. You don't need to have like glowing effects or anything like that. Just have a thing on his chest, that he usually wears, and it just opens up and we see there's an eye inside.
Maybe like a brief flash of light or something on the eye, and that's all you need.
Right, and then we cut to, Doctor Strange having a vision of something that's happening on the other side of the world or whatever. And then we cut back to him and it closes it up and he says, okay, I know where we got to go. Let's go. And that's it. And that's all you need. I mean, if you really stop and think about it, you can get around anything. If you, put a little bit of imagination into it, you can create the illusion of magic, so to speak, without spending a whole bunch of money.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm watching this and thinking about the possibility of a series. It makes me wonder, if this had gone to series, would we have seen a lot more supernatural TV shows coming out earlier than they did? Because a lot of that trend, it really started with Buffy, I think, when we started having all these supernatural TV shows. Before Buffy, they didn't really have a lot of stuff like that.
We had the Night Stalker.
Well, you had a few. You had the Night Stalker, you had Dark Shadows, but it was just these very small ones. But Buffy started a revolution of it, right? Because after Buffy, you got Charmed, you got Supernatural, all these other shows, the Vampire Diaries, Roswell, all this other stuff kept coming out after Buffy. So I wonder if Doctor Strange had gone to series, because this is much more ingrained in the supernatural type stuff and the unusual type stuff than even the Incredible Hulk. Because the Incredible Hulk, it was basically just the Fugitive, except he turns into a big green guy. It
was the Fugitive mashed up with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right.
That's what it was. But but even before, there was a show, you probably haven't heard of it. There was a show called The Sixth Sense that we had, and that came out.
No, I never heard of that.
Yeah, okay. Well, there was a show called The Sixth Sense about a guy he was a paranormal investigator.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, he was going around. He was investigating the supernatural and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, we did have a couple of supernatural shows that were going around, but mostly they were shows of that type with people investigating. The supernatural, which really didn't catch on and become like a big thing, like you said, because then we had the 1-2 punch. We had Buffy, and then we had the X-Files, and then that's when the genre really took off. And because up until then, before then, the champ that we had and the show that everybody said was the gold standard of that genre was the Night Stalker. That was it. Mm-hmm. And everybody from then on kind of took their cues and said, okay, well, we took our influence from the Night Stalker. I mean, people even say that today when they create shows and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, well, I grew up watching the Night Stalker. So would Doctor Strange have kicked off a whole genre of magic-based shows? Probably would have, because if there's one thing that we've seen about television, that we know about television, that television thrives on copying things. And if something is a success in the medium, they all jump on the bandwagon to try to. Why is it now that? Because at one point, I know that there was executive at the CW. he passed on Supergirl, which had one season on CBS before it went back to the CW. But it was supposed to go on the CW at first. But the guy who was in charge at the time passed him on it because he said, well, I'm tired of all these superhero shows on this network. This isn't going to be the superhero network. Well, they got rid of his ass real quick. And they made the CW the superhero network. Why? Because it was successful. They came out with Arrow. Arrow was a success. And now what do we have? That was one show. Now we've got, like 8 superhero shows that are on the CW now?
Oh, it was the same thing before with Buffy and Angel. Like, they started that trend, and then the head of the network, he didn't want, back then it was the WB, he didn't want it to become this, like, urban fantasy supernatural network. So he got rid of Buffy, he killed Angel, and then they fired his ass, and then they start Supernatural and Vampire Diaries and all this other stuff.
Well, that's what happens. If you got something that's successful and you don't want to go, they fire your ass. Yeah, they get rid of you. Because why? Because they're saying, listen, why are you bucking the trend?
Exactly.
We got to jump on. When back in the 1960s, when westerns were big, what happened? Every TV channel, they had westerns.
Right.
And what was the next big thing? Well, we had the Private Eyes were the big thing. So now that was all that was on TV. You had 77 Sunset Strip. You had Peter Gunn. You had Hawaiian Eye. You had, it was all Private Eyes. Then what came after that? Well, cop shows.
Right.
Then cop shows became the big things. Why? Because, we had during the 70s, that was the big thing. We were flooded with cop movies. Mm-hmm. So that was the big thing. So, yeah.
Then in the 90s, you had ER, and that kicked off a whole slew of medical shows.
Yeah, a whole bunch of medical things. So now, and that brings me to my next point, whereas, people will talk about, well, we're being flooded with too many superhero movies. Don't worry about it. It's going to pass.
Right.
As soon as something else becomes the next big thing, Hollywood and TV are going to follow that trend, and we're not going to see superhero movies anymore. That's all. It's just a trend.
Can I get on my soapbox for a minute about this whole idea about, like, there's too many superhero movies?
Well, I don't see why not. You are the co-host.
All right. So you've got Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola and Ken Loach. And you know what? I respect. I don't think I've seen anything of Loach's, actually. If I have, I don't remember any of the. I don't remember any of the titles. But Scorsese, Coppola, loved a lot of their movies. Coppola, we might have to have a discussion with after Dracula, but both good directors, made a lot of great movies. But get the fuck over yourselves. I mean, you remember back in the 70s when these guys were coming up, every existing director was talking about how they're destroying cinema because their movies are too violent and too vulgar and obscene and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, who else? John Landis to a certain extent. All those guys, they're going to destroy Hollywood. That was they were the ones back in the 70s that were, everybody was saying, oh, they're going to destroy Hollywood. Oh, and then once you had Lucas and Spielberg basically created the concept of the summer blockbuster season. Oh, this is going to kill Hollywood. This is going to destroy Hollywood. Well, no, it didn't. It just, shifted Hollywood into a new phase. That's all it did. And once we got...
Which is what happens anyway.
Yeah. I mean, listen, everything runs in cycles. That's all it is. Martin Scorsese. Now, let me say this. I take a backseat to nobody in my respect for Martin Scorsese. As far as I'm concerned, the man has earned the right to have any kind of opinion he wants. Now, having said that, I also think that you shouldn't be going around talking about that superhero movies are all the same when your latest movie is yet another mob movie with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci. Haven't you made this same movie a dozen times already? So I don't think.
Another thing to complain about was the lowest common denominator aspect, whereas everyone's just doing this not for the art, but for the money and all that. And I'm thinking to myself, looking at your body of work, then you've got The Aviator sitting there, which is a great movie, don't get me wrong, but you only made that movie because you wanted an Oscar.
Well, sure. Martin Scorsese, well, of course, Martin Scorsese's problem is that he does, and I would think that him out of anybody else would understand that things run in cycles, and his cycle has run its course.
Right.
That's all it is. It's not that he's through as a director. Of course he's not, because he's got this 3-hour mob epic called The Irishman that's going to be, which is why I think that me personally, I think the reason why he said a lot of that was just to get a lot of buzz going. That was going to be my next point, because you look at every single one of these articles. Martin Scorsese says superhero movies aren't cinema. Francis Ford Coppola says superhero movies are trash. Ken Loach says he hates superhero movies. Each one of those articles, there's a mention in there. Martin Scorsese, who has a film called The Irishman coming out soon. Yeah. Ken Loach, who's working on X project. Francis Ford Coppola, who's got this new movie in production. Right, yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you're just doing this because you want the attention. You want people to pay attention to you. So they read that and they see that you've got a new movie coming out, and then they're like, oh, okay, I have to remember to look that up.
A lot of people get all worked up and get all hysterical about this without understanding how Hollywood works. And in Hollywood, what's the oldest saying that's in Hollywood? There is no such thing as bad publicity. Bad publicity is no publicity at all.
Right. So, which is why also Jennifer Aniston is also bashing superhero movies when she's not exactly known for high cinematic art to begin with.
Oh, well, see, also, again, whenever you hear an actor, especially an actor, bash the superhero movie, that is shorthand for, well, why don't they come and offer me a job?
Right.
That's all that is. But Jennifer Aniston talk about, they don't make Meg Ryan movies anymore. They don't make Meg Ryan romantic comedies. Shit, even Meg Ryan don't make Meg Ryan movies. Meg Ryan says she don't want to see Meg Ryan romantic comedies anymore.
When you were in Along Came Polly, you've kind of sacrificed any right to an opinion in this about cinematic art.
And the funny thing about Jennifer Aniston is that really, the only time she's ever really been successful in any major feature motion picture is when she played in a supporting role. She wasn't the star, like Office Space, which is probably still the best role she's ever had in movies. And when I
would say Horrible Bosses.
Yeah, the Horrible Bosses. I was about to say that she was in the Horrible Bosses movie. But again, she was playing, that was... she wasn't the star. Any movie that Jennifer Aniston was the star, nobody went to see.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. Because...
Even the one that was building off The Graduate, rumor has it. Nobody saw that piece of shit.
Yeah. Now, not to say that I don't like Jennifer Aniston. I think Jennifer Aniston is a fine actress in her niche, which is television. Sitcoms. Right. She could have made a very nice career for the rest of her life, just being in one sitcom after another. No, she tried to go into, major, and she did like a whole bunch of movies, which again, like I said, nobody went to see.
Right.
So now, they got all these superhero movies that are coming along, and they're looking at them, and there's a lot of actors that are looking at these movies, and they're seeing they're revitalizing a lot of careers. They make a lot of money. They get a lot of press. You get to go all over the world.
Plus, they're actors. They're using actors who have been known for comedies. Like you got Paul Rudd, Chris Pratt, Bradley Cooper, who started off in The Hangover. Yeah. So he started off more as a comedy actor too.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in a superhero movie, which is what she wants to be in, instead of doing these stupid comedies on Netflix with Sandler. See, Adam Sandler, who unlike Martin Scorsese, he realized that his time was up.
Right.
As far as, theatrical movies was concerned. So what he did, he ran to Netflix and he made a deal real quick.
Well, the thing with Sandler is he also knows his niche.
Yeah.
Like, he's actually a really good actor. If you've seen him in, what was that Paul Thomas Anderson movie he did, Punch Drunk Love? He was really good in that.
Oh, he was. As a matter of fact, I think I prefer him as a dramatic actor.
Oh, absolutely. Same here.
The comedies.
Same here. But he knows what pays his bills. He knows what people want to see from him. And so he sticks in that lane.
And actually, matter of fact, I got to see if it's still on Netflix. Adam Sandler did make a superhero movie.
Oh, really?
Playing an original superhero called the Cobbler. It's on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
He plays a guy. He inherits a shoe store from his father, I believe. His father dies and he inherits a shoe store. And it's all full of shoes and everything like that. But when he puts on the shoes of somebody, he takes on the appearance of whoever was the owner of that shoe.
Oh, okay.
So, and then he gets involved in, like, the crime boss that is running the neighborhood. So, like, he's running around with a whole bag and he's putting on, like, different shoes to become different people in order to get, if you, folks, just take my word for it. Go watch The Cobbler. The last time I saw it, it was on Netflix, and that was about, like, 2 years ago. Hopefully it's still on there. But, yeah, go watch it. It's with Adam Sandler and Dustin Hoffman, and yeah, by the time you get to, especially once you get to the last 15 minutes, you're going to see that it's a setup for a superhero franchise. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
That's interesting.
Until you see it. Now, when you see it, you let me know, and then we'll come back and we'll do an episode about it.
All right. Sounds good. Oh. So do we have anything else to finish up about Doctor Strange?
Doctor Strange. Let me sum it up for the jury. It is probably one of the least seen of the pre-MCU Marvel movies. Made for
probably
TV.
One of the least seen superhero movies ever.
Yeah, bingo, period.
In fact, I think more people have probably seen the unreleased Fantastic Four than have seen this movie.
I'm sure they have, because of the extreme difficult. At least you go on YouTube and you can find the Fantastic Four movie. You had to dig this up on, and I got to thank you for that, because I would have never thought to go on. What was it, Dailymotion?
Dailymotion, yeah.
Yeah, Dailymotion. I would.
So yeah, you know what, folks? We don't condone piracy or anything like that, but this movie was hard to find.
Yeah, this was rough to find, because I was gonna I was gonna go on Amazon and say, I'll spend $3 and I'll rent it. Can't even do that. Mm-hmm. Can't find, the DVD is unavailable. They don't have the video on there. So yeah, this is a hard movie to find.
But you know what I think also kind of kills it? Because it ties back to what you said about in Hollywood, there's no such thing as bad publicity. When it comes to these movies, infamous, if you're infamously bad, it's better than being mediocre, because nobody knows about the mediocre movies. Everybody knows about the good ones. Everybody knows about the awful ones. But the mediocre ones, nobody knows about.
But see, okay, here's my thing, Perry. I don't have much of, you know what, and you know me, I have no patience for the snobbery of people who claim to be, they're this knowledgeable fan of superhero movies and stuff like that. And then I start throwing names of movies that, I've never seen that one. I've never seen that one. Never seen. Well, then how can you call yourself a fan of anything if you don't know the history of something you claim to be a fan of? I don't understand that, which is why, again, folks, I go back to that. That's why I wanted to revisit some of the older movies. Because I've had people that have asked me, how come you aren't talking about the MCU movies? Well, we'll get to those, Yeah. We'll get to those, but everybody and their mother is talking about them.
Right.
I'd like to revisit some of these older gems. And, maybe you don't know about them, or maybe you have heard about them. And, but I would just like for people to be more aware of these older movies and go back and revisit them so that they can better appreciate what they have now. Because you can really appreciate the Bernard Cumberbatch Doctor Strange we have now if you go back and see this one.
Oh, yeah.
We've come a long way since then.
And that's not to say anything bad, because Hooton does do a pretty good job in this movie. He's no Cumberbatch, don't get me wrong, but he still does a very serviceable job. Had this gone to series, I would have been perfectly happy seeing him in the role.
He's a lot better than I would have thought he would have been. Like I said, okay, everybody in this movie is a lot better than they really had to be.
Yeah.
They took this seriously. They brought commitment to their roles. They said, you know something? Damn the budget. We don't care what the budget is. I'm going to be good. It's like everybody said that. You know what? I'm going to be good. And you know what? They are. And I recommend this movie for the acting as well as being a cultural artifact of what we once had. Mm-hmm. And something that I think that a lot of comic book fans should be, they should seek this movie out and they should look at it. Crummy special effects and all. It has a level of charm and professionalism that, to me, makes it worth watching.
Yeah, especially for this time period.
Yeah, especially for this time period. Like we said earlier, considering that this is a superhero movie, it's got some pretty adult themes and some adult, especially when it comes to how it deals kind of frankly with the sexuality of the main character.
Oh, and remember, like I said before, this is pre-Superman the movie.
Yeah.
And this is actually more adult-oriented than Superman, which prided itself on taking the material very seriously.
Right. Well, this takes it even more seriously. I mean, listen, if you took out all the magic and stuff like that, you would have a psychological drama.
Oh, you've got no Otis in this movie. You've got no Hackman hamming things up in this movie. It's all, everyone plays it completely straight.
You've got no Valerie Perrine,
Right.
Yeah. Much as we enjoy them, this is no Superman. This is a completely different movie. This was written and directed by somebody who obviously knew the source material and wanted to be as faithful to the spirit of it as possible. Right. And as we've said many times, we can forgive a lot if they maintain the spirit of what it is that they're trying to do. And
absolutely.
This guy, he gets the spirit of Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably the perfect note to end this on, is just that phrase, like he gets the spirit of it.
Yeah.
And so now got to talk about the next episode, and even though it's my pick, I think in some way it's yours, because I think you've been inceptioning me over the past 2 weeks, because I'm going to go with Watchmen.
Oh, really?
And I say you're inceptioning me because you've been posting so much stuff about the Watchmen TV show that now I've got Watchmen on my brain 24/7.
Well, you know why? It's only because, and I'm going to save a lot of my thoughts for that, only because the TV series is totally unlike what I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And apparently I'm not the only one, because it's become so polarizing all of a sudden. I mean, there are a lot of people that are You've read the post, Apparently there's a lot of people that are upset about this because they feel, why they got to bring the race element into it? And why do they got to bring this? And why is it so political and everything like that? And for those people that are saying that, I want to say, wait a minute. Did you read the original graphic novel at all?
Oh my God, politics and race were dripping off the page.
I mean, seriously? Did you not read the original one? Even the movie? Mm-hmm. Did you not?
I'm rereading the original now because they had it on sale, and someone on our group page mentioned this, that Comixology should sponsor us because we mention them pretty much every single episode.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention them again because I just picked up Watchmen for $5 and I've been rereading it. And it's the first time I've read it in 10 years. And each time I read it, I find new things about it. And just the political overtones are so heavy.
Yeah. You had the Vietnam War. You had Dick Nixon. You had all of that's what it was about. It was about politics.
Yeah.
So how can you watch the TV series and then complain, well, there's too much political stuff in it, when that's exactly what Watchmen was about?
Exactly.
Oh my God! But me and my wife, we've been watching it, and we've been enjoying it. As a matter of fact, we sat up here the night when they had the premiere, and me and my wife, we watched the movie because she's never seen the movie, and I wanted her to watch it so she would have some background. And that was like the first time I'd seen it myself. I'd watched the movie in about like 5 years, and I'm sitting there. I said, "Wow, there's a lot of stuff in here that I forgot." So maybe what I'll do is I'll dig out my copy because I have the graphic novel. I have a hardcover copy, in fact. I'll dig that out and I'll read that before we do the episode.
Okay, and now what I want to do is, because I've got the ultimate cut of Watchmen, so that's the one with all the Black Freighter stuff put into it as well.
Okay, I've got the director's cut.
Does that have the animated Black Freighter stuff?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, I mean it's not really a big thing, but that's the one I'm gonna go with. So you don't have to buy a new copy or anything like that. No,
I mean this has got because the director's cut. This is the one. It's got like 25 minutes worth of extra scenes in it.
Yeah, that's got all the only thing the director's cut is missing is the animated Black Freighter segments, the pirate comic. That's the only thing that's missing from the director's cut.
Freighter, but what I do is I have Tales of the Black Freighter, but it's on the DVD.
Right.
It's like a separate, it's like a separate thing. But okay. Well, listen, you work with your version, I'll work with mine.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So next episode, we'll be talking about Watchmen, and I'm probably going to have some thoughts about it. I think we'll probably have a little of a back and forth on that one because, as I recall, you really liked that movie, right?
Yeah, I realized it wasn't the graphic novel, but see, then again, I take a different tack than most people. I didn't expect it to be the graphic. And actually, I think that in some ways it does improve on the graphic novel.
So that'll be interesting because I think I've got the opposite opinion of you in some things on that. I don't hate it like a lot of other people do, but I definitely have some issues with it as an adaptation.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, listen, that's valid. But like you said, you don't hate it like some people do, because I know some people, they absolutely detest it and they can't stand it. They say, oh, it's the worst movie that's ever made. And I said, really? And something. Whenever somebody says, oh, that was the worst movie ever, so I said, really? You must not watch a whole lot of movies then. Serious. If that was the worst movie, really, if Watchmen is the worst movie you've ever seen, then you really haven't seen a lot of movies. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that'll be a fun episode to do. I'm really looking forward to this because I haven't seen Watchmen in several years. Probably like 5 years, like you said. Probably the same as you. It was the last time I saw it.
Yeah, I haven't. Watchmen is one of those movies that, like I said, the only reason why I pulled it out was because my wife had never seen it. And she said, well, do you have the movie? I said, yeah. She said, well, I want to see it before I watch the show. So I said, well, you should watch it. So otherwise, I would have to be constantly pausing it and explaining who Dr. Manhattan was or who Spectre was. And so this way she could just watch the movie. And she said, oh, okay, well, now I know the backstory. I can watch the show now. So, yeah. So,
or at least enough of the backstory, because I understand the TV series is more of a sequel to the comic than the movie.
Yeah, because they do make definite reference to the giant squid being dropped on Manhattan. They do make reference to that. So yeah, this is a sequel to the comic book, not the movie.
And it's just the movie. It's such a big time commitment because it's like the ultimate cut. It's like 3 hours long or something like that.
Yeah, well, even the director's cut is like 2.5 hours long. I think. So, yeah, it's a long ass movie. Let me put it that way.
And it's not a movie that's as fun to rewatch as, say, Endgame, which just keeps moving at a brisk pace the whole time.
Yeah, Watchmen is not one of those movies that you, like you said, like if you want to relax and have a good time. Watching a movie. Okay, you put on something like Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Star Wars, or like you said, one of the Avengers movies, something like that. Watchmen is that's a movie that's not like what I would call a Friday or Saturday night movie.
Yeah, definitely not.
Because that gives you something to think about. And also, one of the things that really strikes me about it is that we call it a superhero movie, but there's really no superheroes in there.
Well, it's the same thing with like Batman, and we can actually talk about that, about how do we define superheroes in the next episode. Yeah, that's actually something. That's something important to kind of talk about since we're doing a superhero podcast.
Yeah, but to me, I mean, the characters. Okay, they're much more closer to the pulp heroes, except for Dr. Manhattan, who, as everybody said, yeah, he's really the only because he's the only one that really has superpowers. But everybody else is more, to me, they're more like the pulp characters from the 1930s and the 40s, like the Shadow and Doc Savage. And, they have more in common with those characters.
Right.
Than they do with, like, say, like Spider-Man or, Superman or something like that, who I tend to think of when you say superheroes, I tend to think of people who have superpowers. Mm-hmm. If you're just a costume acrobat, Batman, okay, to me, he's a pulp character that lives and works in a superhero universe. Mm-hmm. Because he's got more in common with the Shadow and the Green Hornet than he does with Superman and Green Lantern. Right. To me. But like you said, we can hash that out another time, but that gives y'all folks something to think about until we get together again.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can find Doctor Strange, give it a look and approach it with the mentality that this was 1978. It was made for TV. They had a pretty crap budget, and they kind of did the best they could with that.
This was the best we had. But listen, I don't care what anybody says. I think they did pretty good.
I think they did a good job, too. And like I said, I was really surprised because I went in expecting this to be painful. And I was surprised at how much I was enjoying it.
Well, I am glad it was not painful for you. I was afraid. I said, boy, he's going to hate watching this. I'm glad. But no, listen, that's what all this is about. I learned something. You learned something. And hopefully the people listening to this, you guys learning something as well as being entertained. So everybody wins.
Well, that's one of the nice things about this dynamic is you're bringing in a lot of these movies that I've probably never seen before, and that I probably would not see again if I have seen them before, if not for you telling me to give them a look at. So, like with Swamp Thing, with Doctor Strange, I don't know if I ever would have seen these movies unless we had done this show.
Oh, well, listen, my work is done then. Good, I'm glad. Listen, I'm glad. Because like I said, there's a lot to like in these movies. And to me, revisiting them, like I always say, it makes me appreciate what we have now even more, seeing where we started when it comes to the, like the genre of superhero movies. Hopefully... Everybody's listening to this, they're getting something out of it too. Because folks, I don't want you just sitting here listening to us gabbing. I want you to actually go out and watch these movies and form your own opinions about them as well.
Yeah, if you head over to our website, we'll have links to where you can hopefully rent them, but if not, there'll definitely be buy links there. So go ahead, head on over, try and find a copy of this movie and give it a look. And also make sure you pick up Dylan and the Odd Jobs. That's what the title is?
Yep, Dylan the Odd Jobs.
Dylan the Odd Jobs. So go ahead and pick that up. Amazon, paperback, wherever you get books. You don't want to miss it. Some really good writers he's got in that collection.
Yeah, paperback and ebook available in both formats. Don't forget to tell the good people that we have a Facebook group.
Yes, facebook.com/superhero cinephiles. There's a Facebook page. You can find the link to our group there as well. Website, superherocinephiles.com. And we're on Twitter at SuperCinemaPod. So come on in, join the conversation. We got a lot of cool people joining up every new episode that drops.
Yeah.
And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes because it'll help us get more looks at the show, possibly get some more listeners as well. Thanks so much for listening. That's it for this week, and next time we'll be watching Watchmen. I'm Perry Constantine.
And I am Derek Ferguson.
And have a good night.